tonight, a life-saving plea. The mum of a 5-year-old girl in need of a heart transplant urges medics to speed up her surgery.
As her parent, I just want to save her, and I just want her to be here as long as she can be.
Also making the headlines, Scottish Conservatives say children as young as 14 should be able to leave school for an apprenticeship or college place. The Lord Advocate meets with a woman fighting for justice for patients harmed by the disgraced surgeon Sam El-Jamel. And in sports, Jose Mourinho aims a dig at Rangers' former boss and says there'll be a tougher test under Barry Ferguson.
Do you think I'm going to comment on, what's his name?
Philippe Clement.
Philippe Clement. Ferguson will be much more pragmatic, much more objective.
I'm John Mackay. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. A mother has told STV News how she feels time is running out for her daughter, who has a rare heart condition and is in need of a transplant. London's Great Ormond Street Hospital has apologised to 5-year-old Bree's family for their distress. It says it's working to place the youngster on the list for a new heart after she was too ill for planned surgery. After waiting 3 months already, Bree's parents are urging medics to speed up this process before their daughter's condition deteriorates. Here's our chief reporter, Sharon Frew.
Watching her daughter play, Bree's mum finds it hard to believe the situation her family is now facing.
I'm in awe of her because she's just so resilient and she just gets on with it. And she's still going to school. She doesn't do PE. I need to lift her up and down the stairs and in and out of the bath now because she can get quite blue and breathless. But she doesn't let things hold her back.
Bree was born with a rare condition that affects the valve on the right side of her heart. In December, the 5-year-old travelled to London for the first of 2 planned operations. Around 2 hours before she was due to head into theatre, doctors told her parents the youngster was too ill for the surgery.
They didn't think she would survive the surgery that was planned. I just said, what are our options now? What can we do to help her? And they said all that's left to do in the last resort is a heart transplant. From birth, this was our plan, and for the plan to go out the window and to be given a new plan and a total 360, it was just a total shock.
Bree's family say the possibility of a transplant was only mentioned in the past once in a brief phone call, leaving them unprepared. They returned to Scotland after an initial chat with a transplant team.
I was told that they would be in contact in due time, no date or time or plan. And there's still not really a care plan in place.
This is now 3 months later?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I just feel so let down. I want her on the list and I want things to get moving because I just feel like we've been in limbo for too long.
In a statement, Great Ormond Street Hospital said, "We are deeply sorry for the worry this has caused to the family. Our teams will continue to work with them to get Bree onto the heart transplant list and we will work with them to address any concerns." The London hospital is in close contact with a multidisciplinary cardiac team from NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. The Health Board acknowledged this is an extremely challenging and distressing time for the family. It has offered to meet with the McCanns to discuss how it can best support them and keep them fully informed of the next steps in their daughter's care.
I've had a meeting with a consultant in Glasgow and he said that she's got months, not years, before she deteriorates further, which puts the absolute fear into me as her mum. And then having a meeting with the transplant team and they're saying that it could be 1, 2, 3 years before we get a transplant for her. As her parent, I just want to save her. And I just want her to be here as long as she can be.
Sharon Frew, STV News, Glasgow.
Children as young as 14 should be able to leave school for an apprenticeship or college place, according to the Scottish Conservatives. The party say it's a bold move to expand youth opportunities and boost Scotland's economy. But the Scottish Secondary Teachers Association dismissed it as silly, and the Education Secretary described it as Dickensian. Here's our political editor, Colin Mackay.
Russell Finlay is trying to build Scottish Conservative support.
Oh, we want it. Job done.
That means getting attention And lowering the school leaving age from 16 to 14 is the kind of policy that gets attention.
The system is failing young people, and we're the only party who are being bold to propose something different, because we cannot continue like this.
But you've been on a building site today. 14-year-olds wouldn't be allowed to work or be on a building site.
Well, the details would need to be fleshed out with consultation. But
That's not even a detail. A 14-year-old wouldn't be allowed to work on a building site.
I've been speaking to business owners, I've been speaking to businesses, I've been speaking to young people and their parents, and they recognise that many of them would be better suited to not being trapped in a classroom environment or trapped in school when they've got absolutely no interest in being there.
It's Scottish Apprenticeship Week, and Historic Environment Scotland is running trial sessions in stonemasonry for young people in Stirling.
I didn't do badly at school, but I didn't ever plan on going down the kind of university route, so apprenticeships and things like this were definitely the route that I wanted to take. 14-year-old me would have jumped at the opportunity.
Could be a bit unsafe.
Yeah, but I think for people that aren't a fan of like the formal education, I think it's a really good opportunity to get them to do something kind of productive.
Look at that, it's even worse than it was.
Some support there, but the SSTA Teachers Union says the plan is silly. Some in the industry describe it as dangerous.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, they're not mature enough to do that. I mean, going back in the 70s, some of the youngsters needed to get out to work to bring money to the table. But what we've got today is a very different climate. Youngsters are being looked after, brought forward, and we need to give them a real experience of life, because they're going to work for best part for 55 years. So leaving at 14 doesn't help anybody.
These proposals from the Scottish Conservatives are Dickensian in nature. The last time there was a proposal to have the school leaving age at 14, it was 1901. I think these proposals are completely out of touch with our schools, with our classrooms, with where our young people are.
You're asking a young person at the age of 13 to convince their parents to allow them to go to college, to go and learn a craft. Some of these crafts can be quite dangerous. It seems like it's a step back in time.
Well, there are proponents of raising the age, there are proponents of reducing the age, and what I've done is looked at other countries.
And you're proposing reducing the age?
Potentially, and what I've done is well, it's a policy proposal, and it's not a manifesto commitment, but we are starting the conversation.
So hang on, you could even drop this in the next year before the election?
We are starting the conversation.
So this is an attention grabber for the Tories, something to get people talking about them. But it's not written in tablets of stone. Colin Mackay, STV News.
And you can hear more on this story on Scotland Tonight, where we'll have the views of a student and a former teacher. That's on STV at 10:40. A victim of a disgraced surgeon who harmed countless patients has been told there is enough evidence to proceed with a criminal investigation into his actions. The Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain and senior detectives apologised to campaigner Jules Rose for the shortfalls in the first 5 years of the police inquiry into Sam El-Jamel. He was head of neurosurgery at NHS Tayside for 18 years before he was suspended in 2013. Lynn Rankin reports.
It's almost 12 years since Jules Rose had her tear duct removed instead of a brain tumour by surgeon Sam El-Jamel. Her fight for justice led to a second meeting with the Lord Advocate and 3 senior detectives tasked with investigating what could be Scotland's biggest medical scandal.
The Lord Advocate explained to me today that the information that they've assessed by the Crown Office gives the basis to form criminal investigation into the actions of El-Jamel from 1995 to 2013.
Sam El-Jamel was head of neurosurgery at NHS Tayside for 18 years before he was suspended in 2013. In that time, he carried out 4,000 operations. This is El-Jamel at a neurosurgery conference in Libya. He was appointed the president of the Libyan Neurological Surgeons. This profile states he is holder of the British Board and Royal Fellowship in Surgery and Neurosurgery, but there appears to be no such thing.
It's traumatic to see this footage and to know that he's still doing what he's doing with no regard at all to the injuries and harm and suffering and butchery and wickedness that he's caused and the devastation of these victims' lives here in Scotland, that he's got the audacity to still continue practising abroad.
More than 200 patients claim to have been harmed by El-Jamel. Some can no longer walk, others struggle to talk. All have been left with life-changing injuries. They want criminal charges to be brought against both El-Jamel and NHS Tayside.
We still want El-Jamel extradited. El-Jamel, we've been coming after you for 7 years and we'll still continue to come after you for another 7. We're not stopping and we're not giving up, and we're certainly not ever going to go away.
In a statement, Detective Chief Superintendent Paul Livingston apologised for the shortcomings with the initial response to complaints in 2018 and said the major investigations team are working with the Crown Office as extensive inquiries continue.
We need a public inquiry!
A public inquiry into the scandal is expected to start in the coming months. Patients hope it brings answers they've waited so long for. Lynn Rankin, STV News.
A man has admitted using a shotgun to commit a murder in Glasgow. Malcolm McNee shot John McGregor in Milton in August 2021. The 44-year-old died from his injuries in hospital. 62-year-old McNee pleaded guilty to murder. Lawyers for Rhys Traynor also submitted guilty pleas to having a firearm on the day of the murder and boarding a flight the day after it. The attack is said to be linked to serious organised crime. Both will be sentenced at a later date. It's been announced that the new Renfrew Bridge could open in late April or early May. The bridge was originally due to be fully operational for pedestrians, cyclists and motorists last autumn, but expected completion was moved to the springtime. The £117 million project will link Renfrew with Clydebank and Yoker directly for the first time. More than 200 million journeys have been made as part of a scheme allowing young people to make bus journeys for free. The measure was introduced just over 3 years ago. Anyone aged between 5 and 21 can apply for a pass. However, bus drivers say anyone abusing staff should have their car suspended or taken away. Our political correspondent, Ewan Petrie, reports.
At this training facility in East Kilbride, apprentices are learning the skills needed for a job in engineering. Among them is Braden, who took a cut in wages to join the apprenticeship programme. But he's saving up to £300 a week through the free bus travel scheme and has been able to move closer to work.
The only reason I was able to move out is because I was able to keep my savings up through the bus travel scheme. I was also able to keep money in for food and all my necessities that I need to actually get through here and to get on with my job. So without it, I would probably struggle to get in here and make a comfortable living.
Jake is also only able to afford his apprenticeship because of the free travel.
I get 2 buses here every day and I wouldn't get here if I didn't have that. I go from Wishaw to Hamilton on one bus, and I go from Hamilton to East Kilbride on another bus, and it's the same on the way back. So it's about an hour every day.
Since its introduction 3 years ago, more than 200 million free journeys have taken place.
It does cost money, along with the very popular over 60s and some disabled people bus pass. There's well over £400 million being invested to support this, but because it tackles child poverty, because it helps our battle on climate change, it is a good investment in our young people and in our transport system.
A survey of bus drivers found more than 84% had experienced increased levels of abuse while working over the past year. Unite the Union released the findings as part of efforts to improve safety after the death of Keith Rawlinson in Elgin. He died of a cardiac arrest following an assault involving a 15-year-old last year.
We've got bus drivers going to their work, being spat on, verbally abused, physically abused. Their families are worried that they're going to their work and not going to come home or come home injured. Anyone that is caught verbally abusing or physically abusing any of our drivers, their bus pass should be suspended or taken away, and the police should be informed.
The Scottish Government says the vast majority of 800,000 young people using the pass are doing so responsibly. But it is looking seriously at withdrawing it from those committing offences. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
MPs have been told officials in charge of the UK's first safe drug consumption facility are now preparing the case to be allowed to provide an area where people can smoke or inhale drugs rather than only inject them. Westminster's Scottish Affairs Committee took evidence earlier from staff running the Thistle Centre in Glasgow, which opened in January. 143 people have used the facility in the first 7 weeks, and medics say a number of potentially fatal overdoses have been reversed.
The medical emergencies, we've managed most of those in-house. Very few have needed an ambulance. Very, very low numbers of people have needed an ambulance, but all of them have returned to the service after that. So the experience, while it's quite a traumatic experience for people, has not put them off coming back to the service. So they've felt they've been well looked after, and they're building good relationships with all the staff team within the service.
2 veteran SNP ministers have become the latest to announce they will stand down at the next Holyrood election. The Finance Secretary, Shona Robertson, and the Transport Secretary, Fiona Hislop, say they won't run again next year. Both have been MSPs since the opening of the Scottish Parliament in 1999.
It just feels at a point of real positivity, and I've still got some energy left, that it's the right time to stand down and to think about perhaps pursuing other interests, things that I've never had the time to do in the past.
The long-standing ban on the sale of alcohol at football matches in Scotland could be under review. A Police Scotland briefing to the Scottish Government has suggested that pilot projects to end the ban could be considered. Well, Tara Fitzpatrick joins us now. So Tara, how did this come about?
Well, this story's come into focus after details emerged of a briefing that was given to First Minister John Swinney, and that was ahead of his attendance at a Scotland versus Croatia match in November last year. Police Scotland in that briefing said that a limited number of pilot projects to gather evidence on the sale of alcohol to fans could be feasible, and that they're open to discussions with the SPFL. Now, football and alcohol have historically gone hand in hand, and we've often seen that when the Tartan Army head off on away trips. But back home, it's a different matter. Currently, fans can consume alcohol in stadiums, but only within specified fan zones and hospitality venues. This pilot project would allow for all fans to consume alcohol within the concourse on the grounds. Now, today, Police Scotland have reiterated that any reintroduction of the sale of alcohol would be a matter for the Scottish Government. But the Scottish Government are currently saying that there are no plans to change the legislation as it stands. And this is long-standing legislation that dates back to 1981. Many will know that it came about after a riot erupted at a Celtic and Rangers Cup final match the year previously.
So what has the reaction to all of this been, Tara?
Well, it will come as no surprise to many that a lot of fan groups are in favour of this ban being lifted. They've branded the ban draconian, and they say that any lifting of the ban would bring football more in line with sports like rugby. But of course, that's not the view of all fans, and there are leading charities, including Alcohol Focus Scotland, who say that lifting the ban would be the wrong decision. They've cited the fact that Scotland has reported a 15-year high in alcohol deaths, and they say that any lifting of the ban could have really dangerous consequences. The Scottish Liberal Democrats are open to the idea of trialling this pilot, but it is very unlikely that we'll see any major changes anytime soon.
Tara, thank you. Anti-abortion protesters have begun 40 days of action outside the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital to coincide with Lent. It comes just weeks after the first arrest was made under the new Safe Access Zones legislation. Vidushi Tiwari reports.
Protesters from the anti-abortion group 40 Days for Life are planning to hold what they call prayer vigils here just outside the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital for the next 40 days. They're just outside the 200-metre safe access zone that surrounds the hospital. It comes just weeks after the first arrest was made in Scotland for a breach of the so-called buffer zone laws. 74-year-old Rose Docherty was arrested last month for breaching the zone. The Green MSP, who brought forward the buffer zone legislation in Scottish Parliament, has called these protests the real test of whether these laws are effective in deterring the harassment and intimidation that service users may experience.
I think there's a few things going on in the world that has probably emboldened them over the last couple of weeks, not least the intervention from the US Vice President. But they are adhering to the zones, which is fantastic. There's less of them than than in previous years, and I hope that actually we'll continue to see this downward trajectory in terms of these protests, and they'll be gone for good shortly. I'm obviously disappointed that people are still outside hospitals rather than being at more appropriate places like here outside Holyrood.
Police Scotland did attend the protests today. They spoke to protesters, but no arrests were made. Vidushi Tiwari, STV News in Glasgow.
The sport now. Jamie's with us tonight. Starting off with breaking news, Jamie.
Yes, John, fan behaviour occasionally a bit of a hot topic, and tonight we've got 3 clubs facing potential sanctions as a result of incidents in the stands.
Your window to sport. C.R. Smith sponsors STV Sport.
Good evening. The SPFL has tonight cut ticket allocations for Celtic and Rangers fans over the use of pyrotechnics. Motherwell have also been sanctioned after supporters of all 3 clubs set off flares and smoke bombs at this season's League Cup semi-finals. Celtic and Rangers will have their allocations reduced by 500 for their next League Cup trips to Hampden, while all 3 clubs have been hit with a suspended punishment of 800 tickets being docked from future matches at the National Stadium. Now, Jose Mourinho says Rangers will be a tougher opponent for his Fenerbahce side tomorrow night under Barry Ferguson's management than they would have been with Philippe Clement in charge. Rangers travel to Turkey for their Europa League last 16 tie as huge underdogs, despite their strong performance in the league phase of the competition. His remit is to steady the ship and bring some pride back to Rangers. But Barry Ferguson now also leads his side into the latter stages of Europe, where tomorrow evening he will come up against one of the most famous managers in football.
I think it's going to be much more difficult with him as a coach than with the previous coach, because the previous coach was more worried about philosophy than on the pitch. It's on the pitch that you win matches. It's not with philosophy. And for sure, Ferguson will be much more pragmatic, much more objective, and will be hard for us. But it's going to be hard for them.
Rangers took positive results from trips to Nice, Olympiacos and Malmo in the league phase, as well as pushing Manchester United all the way at Old Trafford. But recent domestic form pits the odds against them, repeating the feat at the Shukru Saracoğlu Stadium tomorrow night.
I don't think anybody gave him a chance at Spurs at home. I don't think many gave him a chance at Olympiacos away, Man United away. So I still have a belief that they can get through the tie. It's not as great as it probably was a couple of weeks ago when they go through in Europe, but I still think they've got a chance because they have got good quality forward players at times.
The Europa League has brought the best out in this Rangers squad as they fly out of the grey clouds over Glasgow and into the passion of Istanbul. Can they forget their Premiership problems to deliver another memorable performance? To rugby now, and Scotland's Xander Ferguson says the squad will put all their effort in to right the wrongs of their latest defeats to finish the Six Nations on a high. The Scots face Wales at Murrayfield on Saturday, looking to bounce back from consecutive defeats to Ireland and England in the Championship.
It's all about making sure we just right our wrongs and go out there and win these last 2 games. That's a goal going forward. So yeah, going out there and putting in performances that Scotland and we ourselves as players can be proud of. Every game we play for Scotland is a must-win. We want in for Scotland, and I think Greg wants to win for Scotland as well. So we're all doing what we can as a squad, as a collective, as a group to make sure we go out there and we train hard and we learn our lessons and we can go out there and perform at the weekend.
Meanwhile, Scotland women's star Jade Conkle says they're aiming to improve on their recent encouraging Six Nations performances. The Scots have won 2 games from 5 in the previous 2 championships and are targeting a better outcome this season, starting with their opener against Wales later this month.
We've got 3 home games this year, which is, your Ireland, Italy, Wales, and we're definitely going to be targeting those. Wales up first is a big game. But, I've got full confidence in the squad that we're doing all the right things now to put us in the best place for that 80 minutes and to start strong as well. And really exciting. But yeah, we're absolutely targeting a better place to finish.
Your window to sport. CR Smith sponsors STV Sport.
Join us again tomorrow when we'll have the latest from Fenerbahce against Rangers. The build-up to the Scottish Cup quarter-finals begins, and Gregor Townsend will be naming his team to face Wales in the Six Nations.
A lot to look forward to. Jamie, thank you for that. Let's go to the weather now, and Sean has the forecast.
An icy start to the day will give way to a series of oohs and ahs. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Very good evening to you. We've got a lot of cloud out there. It is pretty mild, mind you. Best of the sunshine. You can see lots of sunshine across much of Europe. England and Wales, we're just getting a little bit left out at the moment. That weather front tomorrow just nudges a wee bit further to the north. So perhaps South Lanarkshire, Falkirk, around Grangemouth, parts of Fife, getting some cloud breaks tomorrow, but predominantly again for many of us still staying largely cloudy, but also remaining mild. Tonight though, it's going to still be damp out there. Some more persistent rain, a few heavier bursts coming in across Argyll and Bute, parts of Stirlingshire, the Highlands through tonight. Still quite breezy out there, but Beijing's not as blustery as it was last night. You might have woken up by that wind, gusting up to about 40 to 50 miles per hour in places. So still blustery and still quite damp, but mild for most of us overnight as well. Tomorrow we've got those cloud breaks across southern and eastern parts, and actually feeling quite pleasant in that sunshine during the afternoon, out of the breeze as well. Still breezy across the west coast, across the islands, thicker cloud here and still some outbreaks of rain. Temperatures about 10 to 12 degrees. Turning quite wet for many of us by the end of the day. Weather fronts starting to move in from the west. Quieter weather on Friday, so if you've got plans on Friday, a lot of dry, bright weather, still mild. Your temperatures about 11 or 12, the mid-50s in Fahrenheit. Warmer air moving in from the south on Saturday. A cloudy start to the day, but the weather front moving away to the north, brightening up, and highs across Ayrshire and Fleece and Galloway, 15 or 16 degrees.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
And that's it. Scotland Tonight at 10:40. We'll be speaking to Shona Robeson, one of the two Cabinet Secretaries who has announced they are standing down. But from all of us here, for the moment, enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.